Hi there everyone, this is Laura Colvin Brown from LearnTarotEasily.com and VirtualTarotSchool.com, and I'm just here to post a really quick video for you on something that came up in a phone call yesterday for me. I was having a phone call with a friend who was asking me a question about an oracle deck, and it really brought to my attention that there was like a big difference in my mind that other people weren't seeing so much sometimes between the benefits of using an oracle deck versus the benefits of using a tarot deck. And you know, both kinds of divinatory tools are very valid and very useful. However, there was just something that came up that I want to share with you guys today, because this was just something that I kind of see a lot of. So the person I was talking to was telling me about drawing a card. And he drew one card, singular, and it was just kind of about a general issue, and he drew this one card. And this was from an oracle deck. So he told me about the card, and he asked me, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And my response was basically, well, I don't know. It could mean any number of things. Did you read it about this context or that context? Or was this a card that you wanted to signify some sort of outcome for you? Or was it more to do with where you are at right now, or a transition that you're going through? Or was this about kind of the root situation that this whole scenario has arisen from? Is this about you know, kind of like what you need more of in this situation? Is this about the environment surrounding the situation? What is this one card truly all about? And he realized, I think, as I was doing this, I was like saying all of this to him, that, you know, he wasn't, and most people aren't, really that clear on what they're actually doing, what they're actually contemplating when they're drawing a singular card. So, you know, and some people, you know, are just like totally gifted with the power of a really intuitive, to the point of like almost psychic ability, and they can get into that right away and know what they're reading about exactly. But for most of us, myself included, I'm not ultimately that gifted in that way right away. So I like to have a reading in front of me that has basically a lot of different cards for different aspects of a whole scenario. I love to read 10 card spreads for that reason, because of course in a 10 card spread it's kind of spelled out for you what the card in front of you is about, right? If you're reading a 10 card spread, then, you know, I'll just kind of lead you through a basic Celtic cross spread with the meanings of the different positions in the deck. So the central card would be sort of for the entire situation in general. The second card's sort of a crossing card, like the bridge you're crossing or the transition you're going through right now with it. And then there's a card for the present, there's a card for the deep past, a card for the near past, a card for the near future, a card for your perspective or outlook or attitude on the scenario, a card for the environment that the scenario and you are kind of dwelling within. So the environment is very different from your take. You know, those are two separate things, right? And then there's a card that expresses your hopes and your dreams and your fears about what's going on. So sort of subconscious motivations could be in that one position 9. And then there's a card for the outcome, which can be a little more divinatory or not. And of course, you know, then you have like the whole wide world of reversed cards and what they mean, which I go into in a different training for you guys. But you know, there's like so many different aspects in there, and I love 10 card readings because they give you so much information. So there's a ton of different, you know, more in-depth readings that you could do. That's just an example of one of them. But then I was thinking, I was like, well, how would this work if you did something like a 10 card spread with an oracle deck versus a tarot deck? Well, oracle decks are kind of real specific to the owner of that deck, the creator of that deck. They're good for some things, but if you're like me and you want to get like a ton of like specific information about a reading about a scenario, then you want to do like a more in-depth reading. What's going to happen with a typical oracle deck? Well, a typical oracle deck is going to have around about, I don't know, like 40 cards or something. It could have as little as 20 or 15 cards. It could have as many as, you know, more than that. But typically oracle decks have, you know, 20, 30, 40 cards in them a piece, and they're very specific to the author of the deck, of course. So if you were to do a 10-card spread with a 40-card oracle deck, let's do the math here, you are absolutely going to have a quarter of the deck show up in that reading, right? So when you have a card show up over and over and over again, you know, a lot of people think, oh, this is so uncanny, this same card is showing up. Well, when you really get down to it, you're really trusting that that means something when your logical brain knows that a full quarter of that deck is showing up anytime you do a reading anyway. So of course you're going to have repeat cards, you know. Whereas if you were to do a 10-card spread with a tarot deck, a standard tarot deck has, of course, 78 cards in it. That's a little different. You know, when you do a 10-card spread with a standard tarot card deck, you have, you know, just around about an eighth of the deck show up every time instead of a quarter of the deck. So you get much more specific information. And if a card does show up over and over and over again, your mind knows that this may be a meaningful serendipitous significance, rather than just the probability said this card was going to show up 1 in 4 times, right? It's more significant because there were 78 cards that could have shown up, and this one came up again, versus, well, there were only 20 or 30 or so. So there's a real difference in the significance and the specificity of the information that you glean from using a tarot deck versus using an oracle deck a lot of the time. Now, like I said, if you are a gifted intuitive or you're really, really drawn to one specific oracle deck, by all means use that deck, but you're going to be using it probably in a very different way than you could use a tarot deck. Okay, so tarot decks, especially like 10-card spreads in tarot decks, are really cool, especially for people who want to develop their intuition, but perhaps are not completely trusting of their intuition, or they just don't have much practice using it day to day, and they need to kind of get that practice, just like, you know, in order to start doing push-ups, you need to just start practicing and developing your biceps and developing your core and all the rest of it to do that push-up. You know, if you want to become a more intuitive person, if you want to bring more of your intuitive skills into your day-to-day life, it's important to start a practice. You know, just like anything you want to get better at. If you want to develop your skill as someone who plays classical guitar, you know, then there are exercises you're going to have to do every day to make sure that your fingers are in shape to do that. There are exercises that are very well advised to do if you're developing your intuition. And so I like to use specific spreads in tarot readings, kind of in the same vein there, in the same way. So you're developing your intuition, you're developing a knowledge of where things are, and while you're reading like a big 10-card spread, you're going to be keying into things even unconsciously in your own body about how you're really relating to that reading on a deeper level. So for instance, you know, I'm reading something and my body is feeling a certain way and my energy is feeling a certain way when I'm talking about the transition aspect of that reading. You know, and without me knowing it, I'm actually developing a sense in my body of what it feels like when we're dealing with interpreting a transition. So next time I'm going to be a lot more keyed into, oh yeah, this is what the transition period of this reading feels like, and eventually maybe I'll get to the point, if I read enough, that I can just pull a card from an oracle deck or not even use a deck, right? And I'll just get that sense of knowing in my body about what a transition feels like, and I'll be able to interpret just from an intuition. But at first, when we're first learning that skill, we really have to develop that in a practice, in an exercised system. So that's where reading a 10 card spread can really come in handy, because you have the specifics, you know what they are, and they're out in front of you. So you're exercising reading those and understanding those in a different way. So yeah, that's just something that came up for me when I was talking to someone about the meaning of one card in an oracle deck yesterday. I was like, that's wonderful. However, if you really want to get in touch with your own intuition and develop that intuition within yourself, it's kind of cool to have the training wheels on for a while and use a system like an in-depth 10 card spread with a tarot deck, because you're going to get way more specific information that the cards in front of you are going to be an interpretive device for, rather than just saying, well, I don't know, I haven't tapped into that portion of my intuition yet. What does it mean? You know, which is kind of the boat we're left in if we only draw one card and we haven't developed our intuition enough that we can actually have a translation or a conversation happen from that. It will happen over time for you, but I highly, highly recommend, as you're getting started, as you're building your intuition up, to have a tool like tarot that is specific enough that you can practice it, you can start exercising with that tool to develop your own innate potential of intuition. So I hope that makes sense. If you want to learn more about how I teach tarot, you can visit www.virtualtarotschool.com. I have a couple of free trainings up there for you, and more trainings if you want to go deeper on that site as well. And then I also have a blog that you can check out that I'm actually going to post this video onto, that's called www.learntaroteasily.com. Again, I'm Laura Colvin Brown. I hope that was helpful to you. Let me know one way or another how you feel about this, and if you have any input to share, that would be awesome to see as well. Have a great day. Bye.